All right, so first we'll go over slope and we'll talk about what slope is. Slope is defined mainly in three ways: rate over change, change in y divided by the change in x, or rise over run. And so if we look at change, change means nothing more than the difference of two numbers. Change is like the difference between 5 and 2 is 3. So the change between 5 and 2 is 3. So if we're finding the rate of change or the slope between 2 points, we are then to find the change of their y's, divide that by the change of their x's. And so if we look at the change of their y's, this then would be -4. Change is always defined as final minus initial. And so this is going to be our final point. We'll call this y sub 2. This is going to be our final x here. That's going to be x sub 2. On the other hand, this is going to be y sub 1, and this would be x sub 1. And so if we're going to find the change in those, we're going to have final minus initial, -4 minus 3 for our change in y. Divide that by the change in x, which is going to be 7 minus 6. If I'm going to find that, I need to remember the rule for adding and subtracting integers. If I have two negative numbers I add, that's going to give me a 7, but I'm going to keep that sign, -7. Over 7 minus 6, 7 minus 6 is 1, and so my slope for this line, or for these 2 points, if they are connected, is going to be -7 over 1, or just -7. Let's take a look at the next example. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to use the same exact rule. This is going to be my final point. This is going to be on my initial point, or rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. And so my change in y is going to be 8 minus what?
9.
8 minus 9. Divided by my change in x is going to be what, Isaiah?
That's 3 minus -2.
If I'm going to use my final minus initial, I would have to state the -2 first. So it would be -2 minus what?
3. Which is 5.
So I'd have -1. And I'd have to make that a 5, but if I have the same sign add, then I keep the sign in the end. But if I divide two negatives, sir, what's that going to be?
Positive 1 over 5.
And that's my slope for those 2 points. Let's take a look at this last one. Final minus initial. That's going to be 8 minus a -5. 8 minus a -5. Let's take a deeper look at that. Minus a -5, and 7 minus a -2. 8 minus a -5 is actually what?
8 plus 5.
8 plus 5.
13.
We're doing the opposite of whatever this sign is, and that's addition. 13, you're correct. This is going to be 7 minus a -2, and that's going to be, instead of 7 minus a -2, we rewrite that as
7 plus 2.
7 plus 2, and that's going to be 9. Can these numbers be reduced in any way?
No.
No. So that's our slope right there. The slope of that line. Let's take a look at another type of problem. There'll be times where they won't give us a coordinate. So instead they'll put a variable here. And so we need to find a way to find that coordinate. They're going to help us out by giving us the slope. And so what we're going to do is rewrite that in the same fashion we were finding the slope in the first place, but just realize that that is the slope equation or the slope formula. And so we're going to say 7 minus r. We got the 7 from here and the r from here. Final minus initial. 6 minus a -2, which we all know is 6 plus 2 now, equals a half. Because remember, this whole thing is used to find slope. And so if we know the slope, then we can add that into the formula. Now we're just trying to solve for r. I'm going to rewrite that as 7 minus r over 8 instead of 6 plus 2. Now I can use cross multiplication to solve for r. 8 times 1 is 8. Multiplying those two. 2 times 7 minus r. I need to use the distributive property, so it's going to be 2 times 7.
14 minus 2.
And so now I'm going to continue solving for r. Subtract 14 from both sides. 8 minus 14 is a negative 6. That's gone. We're going to drop down that negative 2, not just the 2. Divide both sides by negative 2. And we know that r has the equal of positive 3. Negative divided by negative. Let's try one more. Sticking with the theme, r minus 2, final minus initial in my y. 5 minus r, final minus initial in my x. My slope this time is 0. This is going to be easy because all I have to do is cross multiply this 5 minus r to that 0. If I pretend this is 0 over 1, then I can cross multiply the 1. And so now I'm going to have 1 times this. 1 times any number is that number. Multiplicative identity. R minus 2 equals 5 minus r times 0. Anything times 0 is?
0.
0. Then r has to equal what number?
0.
0.
If I add
2
2 on both sides,
2.
r equals 2. Work for that.